up and went and picked up a nice bottle of Knob Creek 100 proof rye bourbon whiskey. We had a little bit of luck with Wiggle, and then we got away from it for quite a while, but we're going to circle back to do it again. I know you kind of did the shopping on this one, so what led you to Knob?
So I think what the major thing was actually today was that we officially hit 100 followers on Twitter, which was a pretty big milestone for me and Brandon. I know it probably doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but we just do this for shits and gigs, and it was fun for us to see that we got 100 people that actually care enough to follow us and watch these things. And what inspired me to go for Knob Creek specifically was I was actually just looking for any bottle that I could find that was 100 proof because I thought it'd be funny to do, 100 followers and 100 proof. And I know that this was actually one of my brother-in-law's favorite picks for a while, so I figured I'd pick it up and try it out and see if he's accurate in his assessment. So
that's why you're the creative department. I wouldn't have thought to tie in 100 follows. Like I said, for us, it's a big deal. I mean, there are TikTokers that get that in about 0.4 seconds. But then again, you and I don't dance on camera near as much. So
maybe that's our
that might be episode 10.
Yeah, that might be episode 10. We'll see. So I thought that this would be a really good option, and it should be a pretty good flavor. We don't really do the bourbons that often, but we feel like we've kind of been neglecting our bourbon fans. So I think that it'll be fun for us to do this and try it out.
And then what kind of price point can people expect for Knob?
Believe it or not, this wasn't that bad. I think it was like $38, something like that. It really wasn't that bad for, especially when you're looking at, like an American bourbon. Sometimes they tend to get a little bit pricier. You're looking in the 100 proof, which also is one of those things that starts to get a little bit pricier. This specific bottle is, aged at least 9 years. So you can start getting in the more expensive territory as you start getting in that realm.
Okay. I think there's nothing left to do really but crack it open. And I just wanted to send a special apology out to the 3 people that enjoy watching Chris open bottles. This may not be that week. We got like a weird wax situation on top, kind of like Makers, if you're familiar, with this tab that we don't necessarily trust, but we have a knife on standby in case we need it. But let's see if we can stick the landing and open this cap up. So good.
I also don't think it's going to be a very good ASMR.
It's not going to be loud, I don't think.
Although when the cork comes out, it might be nice. Because this is a very sealed cork, considering it's underneath this layer of wax.
Let's see what happens.
All right. We got through it.
This thing is wrapped like Fort Knox.
It really is.
You have like the wax, you have the fake cap, and another cap. Some kind of wire mechanism. Yeah, that's pretty weak. I expected a lot more. I also expected like a real cork.
Yeah, this is a shitty cork.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're not talking $60, $70 bottle here. It's a pretty economic brand and pretty economic whiskey, so we'll see.
I wonder if there are people out there that judge whiskey by the cork.
There probably is something to that, if I'm being honest.
And we're getting some fancy glassware apparently. We were told we've been doing this all wrong and that our glasses are letting too much of the aroma out. So we're getting the best glasses money can buy without having a lot of money.
And by that, we mean very average price glasses.
Big deal for us, probably average for most of you.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, buddy.
I didn't mention the blocks.
I like how that's your first thing.
Well, it hit me when I was drinking it because
not the taste of the whiskey, not the the smell of the whiskey, nothing about the whiskey. I forgot to mention the stones that are keeping it cold.
Because usually my whiskey is cold, and as soon as I drank it, it wasn't, and I was like, okay, something's wrong here. Mm-hmm. And then it's me outsmarting myself. So there's a gnome in the way at the moment. Oh, that's weird. But I was able to find. Actually, my girlfriend was able to find these square stones that allegedly you put in the freezer. They get cold like an ice cube, and you can put it in your drink so you don't dilute your drink.
I would think typically the directions probably say keep them in for more than 5 minutes, though, because
it was 45 minutes. Thank you very much.
But I think that over time they would get cold. And not to mention, we did just pour the whiskey into that glass, so
yeah,
it might need
it's not
a minute or two for it to go.
Let me see if we made any headway. Nope, still lukewarm. So,
welcome to the gentleman's club.
Yeah, we might leave it in there a little bit longer. I also didn't realize that, whiskey on the rocks, of course, is not just about keeping it cold. It waters down your whiskey.
It does. So this kind of doesn't do the same thing.
Which is definitely the way I prefer it.
Yeah.
Especially now, every time I've had it straight, I'm not a huge fan. I like drinks cold.
Mm-hmm.
And then I figured these, like, oh, cool. It's like drinking it straight, but it's cold. And now I'm realizing that's not the part I enjoy. I like having it watered down a tad.
Well, I guess we'll have to reevaluate your situation here and go back to those big ice cubes for you.
Yes, we'll have to go back to getting the spheres. But before we get really too far off the lead here, for 100 proof, actually, I pretty well enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's pretty smooth for what it is. I mean, I would say that this is definitely on the better end of, the cheaper bourbon.
It's a keep you warm bourbon.
Yeah, certainly. And what I like about it is that it's not overly smoky to the point where you feel like you're biting into a piece of charcoal.
Yeah.
Because that's like my least favorite part about bourbons in general. And I've definitely gone on record by saying that in the past. So I'm not going to bore the audience. But the reality of the matter is I think that this has all the right whiskey taste with a lot less of that oaky kind of char taste that I know goes hand in hand with bourbon, but sometimes I feel like it could just be too overwhelming.
It's really what bourbon's famous for. I mean, think of all of like your big American bourbon companies. They all have that version of Black Label, Devil's Cut, like all these kinds of things where they're in singed barrels for years and years and years and years. And I'm sure a ton of people are. It's like they would sip on this and go, can't taste the aging process. You really can't taste the wood quite as much. What am I doing here? If you're somebody who doesn't love bourbon already, that's your favorite part about it, is because it's a little bit closer to the whiskey you know and love, which is more of a sweeter Irish whiskey.
I mean, it smells great.
It does.
It really does, and it tastes really good too.
And I was not kidding when I said it keeps you warm. Like I feel like this should be like in one of those like wooden like buckets under a St. Bernard somewhere in Alaska. Like this would rescue you if you were stuck on Everest.
It certainly would. If you happen to catch yourself in the middle of Everest with
just
the
whiskey.
Fortunate situation of getting whiskey instead of actual help, I would definitely take that.
I mean, I use whiskey instead of actual help for all kinds of problems. I don't know about you. It's a lot cheaper too.
That's a very fair point.
You don't pay by the week.
Well, I think one thing that we've been doing that we need to stray away from in a little bit of just kind of change up the pattern a little bit is we've been rating all of our whiskeys. And at this point, this is the 10th whiskey that we've tried.
Yeah, 10th whiskey, 9th week.
Yeah, even though we're on episode 9, this is the 10th one we've tried. So I'm not going to do a full top 10 list because I feel like it's getting way too confusing for us to do that. I think what we need to start getting into the idea of is this a top 5 whiskey? And if so, does it dethrone any of the top 3?
Yeah, and that makes it easier.
Because I think that if we just keep going, it's going to be ridiculous.
I already don't remember. I barely remember the top 5.
It's gotten a little bit ridiculous, if I'm being honest. It is a show about drinking whiskey, so remembering things is probably not the easiest thing to do.
Exactly. And there's a whiskey that has been getting consistently bumped down our charts every week.
Yeah.
And that is Sheepdog, which was never supposed to be a great whiskey to begin with. I was surprised. So the episode we did was Sheepdog, which wasn't great, and Grey Coast, which we both agreed was pretty all right, pretty solid middle of the road whiskey. Really thought that was going to drift off into like obscurity. That has been one of our more popular episodes, getting picked up by a blog. So I want to shout out Whiskey Nut. For one, somehow finding Sheepdog at a bar, not easy to do. Almost certain this dude does not live in the U.S., doesn't, Ireland. So he was able to find in the whiskey capital of the world that, pardon me, Sheepdog, abomination of a whiskey, and then took the time to include us in his blog about it.
Which is pretty awesome, because if he had the idea of trying it based on us, that's amazing.
Which I think is the case.
It may or not be the case. If he happens to see this episode, maybe he can clarify on the details of that.
Yeah.
But it was really great to have some type of interaction. We'd love to hear more interaction. I know that a lot of people that follow us aren't from the States, and we understand that, getting a guest on here from another country is difficult with the times and everything else. We happen to do this, usually at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Eastern, it's difficult. I know a lot of those countries are much further ahead on time than we are. But any type of interaction is helpful to us. It really makes us feel a little bit more involved, and we really enjoy that back and forth.
Especially when you try a whiskey because of us. I want everybody to go read the article. You can find that at 2 Drams of Whiskey on Twitter. But the spark notes was he was at a bar and saw this Sheepdog peanut butter whiskey, and because we had said something about it, it was already in his head. It was like, I've heard of this before. Let me give it a shot. He didn't like it either.
Yeah.
we never said we were right all the time. We also didn't say we liked that whiskey.
Yeah.
But it was kind of cool to be influencing opinions across the pond.
No, absolutely. And I'd love to, like I said, I'd love to get more of that interaction. But with that being said, I think that was like a really great tie-in for that.
Yeah.
What was your opinion on this? Is it a top 5 contender or does it fall short?
For me, it falls short of the top 5 for the simple reason that I'm not a huge bourbon fan, and Wiggle right now is clinging to a top 5 spot in my opinion, and I enjoyed Wiggle more than I enjoyed this. So I don't feel right bumping Wiggle out, and we're already too far down the road of preferring Irish whiskey. So I feel like I'd be going back on my word to bump Irish whiskey out for a second bourbon in the top 5.
Yeah, no,
so for me, they're just outside.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, for me to replace a top 5 whiskey that we have right now with another bourbon, it would have to do the same thing that Wiggle did for me, which I think Wiggle really exceeded my expectations. So I think that if another bourbon did that, then I would be 100% on board with bumping something off. But as of right now, I would say this is like just falls shy of that area, because this is definitely one of those ones that I would pick up and drink again in a heartbeat. Yeah. It's just not my top 5 daily, whiskey kind of drink.
That's the thing. Like, it's really good. I'm taking anything away from that. It's just that, I mean, what's just kind of cool, like, we've been doing this long enough now where it's getting hard to knock whiskeys out of the top 5.
Yeah.
And Wiggle had me reconsidering whether I preferred Irish whiskey or bourbon.
It was good.
Was still really good, but that didn't cross my mind. I would still gladly take a Bushmill, a Jameson, Sheepdog, or ahead of it.
Yep.
But I think we spent a lot more time on this whiskey than we usually do, which means I guess we're getting a little bit better at this.
I think it's also a testament to having something to talk about with the whiskey, because it is good.
But we can't. I think the reason that all 20 of you listen to the podcast, if I had to guess, is the Let's Drink About It sessions. So we're going to switch over to the fan favorite to wrap this thing up. And we didn't have a topic coming in. And we wanted to do something special for the 100 followers. We'll get to that when we close the episode. But we were kind of having dinner, and Chris and I came across the perfect topic, Let's Drink About It. And it is rewatching old cartoons and wondering how on earth they got past the editing room, and then how your parents let you watch it. And I think the one that got us thinking about it was SpongeBob and the Suds episode. For a little bit of backstory, my girlfriend went to work today, cold day outside, might have woken up a little bit late, what have you, and was promptly told she looked like SpongeBob when SpongeBob had the Suds. This was on Random Act of Kindness Day, so I'm not sure what they were trying to accomplish.
Which seems like
with that commentary. It's like random act of hatred.
Random act of dissing somebody day is more like it. No, I totally agree. I think it's really funny because, we grew up in one of the golden eras of cartoons, for sure, at least in my opinion. I'm sure everybody that grew up watching cartoons probably believes that from every generation, but I feel like we sparked some of the best, funniest cartoons out of anybody.
The 90s were a mecca for
cartoons. Absolutely. And I thought what was hysterical was the first cartoon moment that came to mind. You totally agree with me. We both connected on it. Was we've been seeing on TikTok, and it sparked my thought process on it, was the Johnny Bravo episode where he literally gets tied down to a table. And this is on live TV as a child. You're watching this, and him basically get seduced forcefully.
Not even
on TV. It's not even subtle about it at all. This is some 50 Shades of Grey shit.
Seduced
on Cartoon Network, which I thought was really funny. So that whole thing, sparked me to look up some other funny ones. And there's another one that I'm just going to go through a couple of them. There was one from Scooby-Doo.
Before we go into the list, what got us to that, what made us think of Johnny Bravo was talking about the Suds and looking up the Suds episode.
Yes.
And I mean, we have a good camera, but it's definitely not, professional grade, but for those of you, if you're able to see, there is a picture of SpongeBob in some kind of a lair with fire candles. Patrick is wearing a sock over his head.
It's looking very BDSM.
Yeah, it's very like that room in the basement you don't tell the guests about vibes.
Yeah.
And this was a children's show that I personally loved and would watch with my parents. And I would love to have gone back in time and seen what was going through their head when BDSM SpongeBob came on.
I think they just really, all these cartoons, the creators of them probably just thought it would be so much fun to push the envelope on things that they could get away with.
Well, know the backstory for SpongeBob, right? That it wasn't originally written for children.
Oh, was it not?
No, it was written as an Adult Swim special.
Oh, that's funny.
But then they realized that if they took out the suggestive language, it functioned perfectly as a kid's show. And and then kind of became probably the biggest kids cartoon of all time, I would say.
I think another one with the hidden humor that was definitely geared towards parents as well was Fairly Odd Parents. Had like a lot of really good one-liners in it that I think definitely went over kids' heads at the time. But if I ever happen to catch like an episode of that on TV, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, this was not meant for kids when it comes to some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth.
Yeah, Cartoon Network had a couple, Nickelodeon had a couple. We'll get to the list now. My favorite thing about watching SpongeBob now is like Squidward was such a vibe at the time. Like he got it.
Oh yeah.
They'd have customers come up. It's like, oh, is the Krabby Patty good? I don't care. Or like he. If you've worked in customer service, go back and watch Squidward, and it'll make you feel so much better about yourself. But anyway, sorry, I don't. Not to bury the lead. Let's get to the list.
No, you're good. That's a very real world thing. And speaking of Fairly Odd Parents, I'm just gonna like pick and choose a couple of these that I randomly see. There's one from Fairly Odd Parents on here where Timmy's dad is saying, "Don't worry about it. My dreams were shattered years ago." And Timmy said, "How many years ago?" And he asked, "How old are you?"
Yeah, like,
which I think is like such an off the cuff joke, and that's like exactly what I meant when I said it's not necessarily like a kid would never have picked up on a joke like that. It's just not possible.
But the parents
watching it get a kick out of it, and it's not like it's dangerous to the kid to hear that kind of joke. It's just funny.
How old are you?
It's very funny.
That's very like depressed middle-aged dad vibe, which is great. Some of the best jokes come from that era.
Oh, absolutely, I agree.
The lab, Dexter's
lab. There's a Dexter's one here, and this one's talking about how he got like this assistant, and it was like a teenage girl, and she had a developed body, and he says, "Yes, dancing. I'd like to see you dance."
Very PG way to put it there.
PG way to put it. He said, "Yes, dancing. I'd like to see you dance," and she said, "Okay, but it's $50 extra."
Wow.
So like those are the kind of things
that's really way more to the point than I expected.
I don't remember that in the show, but how could you remember that as a kid?
That was the original OnlyFans.
Yeah, pretty much. These are just hysterical. I think a lot of them are really good. And I've done very little research because when have we ever done a ton of prep for anything like this?
I think my favorite character from like that Fairly Odd Parents show was like anytime Dinkelberg made an appearance.
Yeah.
Or Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimmsdale Dimmadome.
Here's one from Hey Arnold, and he's talking to his grandpa, and he said, "You're not too old, Grandpa, and you still got plenty of brain cells." And his grandpa said, "No, not since Woodstock." So I think these are great. I mean, like, they just are so off the cuff and funny.
Look at number 22. That one was a good one.
Number 22. The Rugrats.
The Rugrats Gone Wild. It sounds like a VHS in the back of the store.
Yeah, so this one's talking about like how the two babies, one's a girl. They said, "Man, they cut my cord," and then the boy one said, "Consider yourself lucky," as they're both checking underneath their diapers. That's hysterical.
Some of those jokes had to be written with the expectation parents are watching because no kids landed. They're not landing on any kids.
That one you have to just look at. You can't even.
I'm not exactly sure how to work through this one. But apparently also in Dexter's, lab, there is, I'm assuming his mom bent over in the kitchen and her ass just says Dad's Trophy, which I'm pretty sure they must have bought on the Wildwood Boardwalk.
I don't even think that one's real. That one seems a little bit far-fetched to me. I know that this whole thing is about like stretched comedy for kids.
Yeah.
But that one seems a little bit too direct, although some of them pretty are.
I don't think that's necessarily worse than implying the secretary was a prostitute, to be honest with you.
And this one actually has no context at all, but it's talking about Toy Story. And one of the dolls that was in Sid's bedroom was a fishing hook with legs on it. And I didn't even draw the parallel. That's a hooker.
Dude,
it's literally the doll is a hooker. And that's hysterical.
I had no idea.
You guys just figured that out?
I didn't. Don't act like you knew before this podcast.
When you were a kid, you're looking at that and it was like, yeah, she sells herself on the street for dollars.
Yeah.
There's no way. No, why would I ever think like that?
Yeah.
I'm sitting here watching
I think I saw on online or something.
I am sitting there as a child watching a movie about toys coming to life. The last thing I'm thinking about is hookers getting dollar bills on the street.
Dude, even as an adult, I'm looking at this and there's a skinhead baby on robot legs. None of this makes sense. There's no reason to think that's a commentary on society.
That's really funny,
though. Disney's not that innocent either. I mean, if we talk about original Cartoon Network shows or Nickelodeon, even a show with Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny, or maybe it was one with Daffy Duck. It was him reading a Duck Play magazine, and there was an ad for cigarettes on the back of it, right? they're not all innocent. It's just a matter of if we were able to catch on, and if those innuendos were really something that our parents caught on to as well.
Also, not a cartoon, but that show Life with Derek, the
You got anything?
the one about the girl who's kind of like almost in love with her stepbrother, Derek, the stepbrother. Like it's a blended family. But
Was
there's
this on
so much
Emily, is your age showing right now?
tension.
Was this on major networks, or did you find this on the dark web somewhere?
Disney.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna know what this is.
Was it like XXX Disney or something,
No.
or like Mouse Hub?
Mouse Hub?
But they don't have it on Disney Plus because of that now.
Mm.
Mickey Mouse Hub House.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, I think that we get the drift of that ideology. There are a couple really fun ones in here. I mean, if anybody has any interest in looking this up,
We'll put the link on our Twitter. You
Yeah,
guys can
this is
scroll
just
through and
a
let us know if
page.
we missed any.
There's 79 dirty adult jokes on here, and I think that they're all really funny, but I don't think that we have the time nor the patience to read through every single one of these.
No, and honestly, there was a couple home runs, and then there was a couple real duds.
Yeah. Duds are never the fun part.
No, and then I thought I watched a lot of cartoons, but like every time someone brings up like I'd never heard of Derek's World or like
Life with Derek.
Life with Derek,
Life with
like
Derek.
Derek's World.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
yeah, like
That title went in one ear and out the
yeah.
other.
I mean, what about Freakazoid? That one had some pretty bad ones in it too.
That really wasn't meant to be a kid's show at all.
Yeah.
That was very true. So on another top, 10 note or whatever, I thought it would also be fun for us to talk about, since we do have 100 followers, I tied it in again. I have the top 10
This is a big deal for
facts.
Chris if you hadn't noticed.
I literally thought about this all day. This is a top 10 facts about the number 100, and this is probably boring, so I'll only pick a couple of them and I'll go through them. But the Old Norse word hundrad, from which 100 derives, was originally meant to mean 120, not 100. So I don't know where that got misconstrued. Until the 19th century, a long 100 was still a term used to mean 120, especially measured number of fishes sold.
My sides are splitting.
It's not meant to be comic. It's meant to be educational. This is an educational program, Brandon.
I think
Please.
it's funny because Brandon's unamused.
Please tell me more about how 120 is also 100.
The 100th most popular country in the world, populated country in the world, is Bulgaria.
Okay.
Let's see. Is there any actual interesting ones on here? The longest car ever made was a 100-foot long Cadillac with 26 wheels, a swimming pool, a jacuzzi, a helipad, and a hinged section in the middle to enable it to turn corners.
That show is right from Pimp My Ride. Like there is no way Exhibit was not in on the building of that show.
Funny sidebar on Pimp My Ride. Did you know that when they redid all those cars, 99% of the time they actually never used the original car that they were given? They would just find an equivalent year model because the car would be so fucked that they couldn't actually use it. They had to pick a different car.
I don't think anyone used it after it left that shop. Like, who's going to drive around in a Honda Civic with a jacuzzi?
There was a YouTube channel that I saw like years ago, and it was this guy that was buying up old Pimp My Ride cars to see if they were like still holding up the way that they were when they were originally there. And spoiler alert, no, they were absolutely not. However, he did say it was pretty impressive how they did like all the wiring and all the structure of the LEDs and speakers and stuff in them. Because, you needed like 1,000 speakers in one sedan.
That was the best guy. That show was
Yeah.
awesome. Because it'd be a mom with like 4 kids and no job. And there'd be the speaker guy, Mike. And he's like, what she needed was 17 subs.
Yeah. It's like if she wants to listen to music while she's changing a tire,
Yeah.
she's got that music. If she needs to listen to some music while she's changing her windshield wipers, she could do that too.
We took the back seats out, took the
Yeah.
airbags out. It's just subs all around.
Just subs
Get the
everywhere.
kids to school safely.
We replaced a rear view mirror with speakers.
Meanwhile, the poor
Everything.
lady's working 6 jobs, 5 kids.
Yeah. What I really would have appreciated is if you took this money and put it into my paycheck. No, we can't do that.
Yeah.
But we can put $20,000 worth of bullshit in your car.
This will be the
No
sickest
problem.
Honda Civic you've ever seen.
Exactly.
Sorry
That's
about your
hysterical.
life, though. It was. I don't know why they always did it that way too. Like they would start the episode with like 10 minutes of just like the most heartbreaking shit you ever heard,
Yeah.
and then they're gonna fix it with like a yeah.
This person's a literal charity case, and instead of actually making a real difference, we're gonna pimp their ride. It's like giving them like a good, reliable
A job
car to
would be
get from point
nice.
A to B would be pretty cool.
Maybe groceries. Home
Yeah.
makeover. Yeah, dude, home makeover. That was the way to do it.
I don't know. There's
What
so
was
many
that dude's name? It
options
was
out there
Scott something.
for home makeover.
Yeah, who's the home makeover guy?
Extreme Home Makeover.
Yeah, the big
Ty Pennington.
Ty Pennington. Move that bus guy. Yeah.
Move that bus.
At least he was making a difference. They got a home. I did find out they had to pay taxes on that though.
He's onto something. We should do like a move that bus, but for our whiskey reveals every week, we'll just have like a giant cardboard cutout.
We'll get a scale model bus.
It'll just be instead of a bus, though, it'll just be Ty, and it'll be a cardboard cutout of Ty, and we'll just say move that Ty and have him move across the screen.
Or we could really just dive into the production value and get like a cardboard box and draw a bus on it.
That's too much work.
Just
It's
really,
probably much simpler to buy a cardboard cutout on Amazon of Ty.
that's true too. But I'm being told that we're running out of time. But before we wrap up, I wanted to make sure that we mentioned next week is our 10th episode, and we've been saying it for about the last week. I didn't post the link yet, but next week we want you guys to pick our whiskey. As long as we can get it in the States, we will buy it. If we need to split it, we'll split it. For once, we're not going to worry about how much the whiskey costs.
Within reason.
Yeah, I mean, let's keep it under 100, but we'll split it. I'll put the poll up tonight. It'll last through the week, and whoever gets the most votes wins. Most votes wins. If you DM me one, I mean, can you just vote? It'd be a lot easier on my end, but I'll still count it. And if you feature us in any other blogs or any of your podcasts, just please let us know. We'd love to return the favor. But next week, it's fans' choice. You guys can choose the whiskey. You choose the let's drink about it topics. We might have one other surprise in there. We'll see. But next show, 10th episode, spectacular. We will see you then.
It's going to be even more exciting than the 100th
Yes.
follower episode. Maybe I can get some more facts out, some factoids that'll put Brandon and everybody else to sleep.
Maybe we'll bring back everyone's least favorite person, Jeff.
And on that note, we're out. God, I can't wait to roast Jeff.
I don't think he listens.